side, I see the born, of no return. Just ahead now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, October 28th, 2014. We're only a couple of days away from Halloween. Gotta wonder what all the goblins and gremlins are thinking about now. My name is Gary Hendershot. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network. And I hope you're all in the harvest time spirit. You know, that's, part of what we're supposed to be celebrating, as the end of October comes up. The harvest is supposed to be in. We're supposed to have some partying and some feasting going on. And how it got twisted into this commercial enterprise where everybody's got to sell your kid the latest costume and they all run around begging for candy. How it got twisted into that, I don't know. But whatever you think of the Halloween season, best to just kick back and enjoy it. It's like everything else. Some will have a good time. Some will turn their lights off and hide behind their doors. That's really up to you. Let's see here. This first article, this is out of Blacklisted News. The headliner is U.S. covers up support for Hong Kong's Occupy Central protests. Now, for a long time, the United States government has involved itself in, shall we say, nation building. I mean, this goes back, to the days of the banana republics. I mean, does that ring any bells from, your high school history class? Remember, the war we had in Honduras for Chiquita banana. I don't know. Maybe this crowd's too young to have gotten those courses. But the fact is, the United States has stuck its fingers in other nations' business for a long time. And the United States isn't alone in doing this. I mean, it's kind of common. The colonial age is the most obvious representation of that, where Europeans seem to think themselves superior to other peoples in the world and basically came in with guns and goons and subjugated nations all over the world and basically raped them of their resources. I mean, this has been going on for as long as most of us can remember, and longer than most of us can. Well, lately, the press here in the United States has almost been bragging about the many successes that the U.S. State Department has achieved in remolding so many despot, dictatorship, tyrannical regimes around the world. You don't have to look very far. I mean, think about it. I mean, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. Let's go kick Saddam's ass. The Taliban is treating their women bad, and they don't wash their feet every night, so let's go and bomb the hell out of them. Libya, well, Gaddafi was a bad guy. Then he was a good guy. Then he was a bad guy, mainly as soon as he started talking about selling his oil for gold or some other currency than dollars. All of a sudden, he became a really, really bad guy, and we bombed the living daylights out of Libya. And Egypt, well, we had our guy in there, but the people didn't like him, so they threw him out and put in some guy that they liked, but he didn't like us, so we had to have them take him out and put somebody else in that we... Sometimes it gets so confusing, you can't hardly tell without a scorecard what the heck is going on. Well, of late, it appears that the United States has stuck its fingers in China's business in Hong Kong. Now, the way they do this is kind of under the table. I mean, it's not like the U.S. State Department goes in and recruits internal dissenters and gets them, because that would be kind of like traditional spying. No, it's a little bit more subtle than that. They have these NGOs, these non-governmental agencies or organizations or whatever, the big non-profits, you know them as, Save the Children and, 1,000 Points of Light for Democracy or whatever. They've got all these really lovely non-sequitur names that make them sound like they're like a warm and fuzzy teddy bear, when in reality, what they're there to do for is they're there to find out who within this nation that we wish to target for rebuilding might be helpful. And they get special training and special funding, and then they're sent back in to organize a revolt. Now, we saw it happen in Ukraine very recently, and it was handled in the usual subtle fashion, and then that phone intercept leaked out where Lois Lerner was the IRS woman, whatever her name was, you know the one I'm talking about. F the EU, remember that one? Well, and everybody started thinking, well, wait a minute, the United States spent $5 billion to bring down the government of Ukraine? Is that what we pay our government to do? Now, there's always plausible deniability when things go on like this, unless somebody happens to intercept, a phone call like what happened in Ukraine. But, there are still investigative journalists out there who do turn the rocks over and try their best to bring the real deal. Unfortunately, these days, it's more and more risky for these investigative journalists to ply their craft. Many nation states, including the United States, would like to consider journalists spies. And a lot of that is going around with this incident in Hong Kong. The New York Times minces no words. The U.S. put those protesters out on the street after years of careful planning, with some of the training and preparation taking place as early as 2008. In the streets of downtown Hong Kong, a dwindling number of protesters carry on in vain. They hold a city and region hostage in attempts to carry out yet another U.S.-funded and directed color revolution. You see, now that the words kind of got out to the folks in Hong Kong that this is really a U.S.-funded provocation, and in the age of the internet, with so many of them in Hong Kong being tech-savvy and reading their Twitters, they say, wait a minute, we thought this revolution was about us. We thought this was about us getting control over our government. We had no idea that what was really being perpetrated here was a coup on behalf of U.S. interests. So now they can't hardly get a crowd together in Hong Kong. So the protests in Hong Kong are falling on hard times. It's not that I have any love for the Chinese and the way the Chinese are keeping the people of Hong Kong under their thumb. But, when it goes the way it went for the folks in Egypt, or it goes the way it went for the folks in Libya, or it goes the way it went for the folks in Ukraine, where all they really do is trade one bunch of crooks for another bunch of crooks, you have to stop and ask yourself, was this really a people's revolution? Was this revolution really carried out on behalf of the people in whose name it was performed? I think if you ask the folks in Libya right now, or you ask the folks in Egypt, or you ask the folks in Iraq, or if you ask the folks in Afghanistan, these are all failed states. These were all nations that, whether you like them or not, you don't have to like the Taliban, but, they were a stabilizing influence in Afghanistan. You don't have to like Gaddafi. The guy did a lot of stuff that was pretty ugly. But he was a stabilizing influence in Libya. And under his rule, average Joe Libyan did pretty good. You don't have to like Saddam Hussein. The guy was, so crooked you had to scream into his bed every night. But under Saddam Hussein, all the various tribes that make up Iraq more or less got along. And Iraq was up and coming until the United States and its allies blew them back into the Stone Age. Is that really the picture that the people of Hong Kong wish to envision? U.S. allies against ISIS. U.S. allies against ISIS are actually ISIS's main allies. Wait a minute. Here again, let me get out my scorecard. Let me see who's on first, who's on second, who's on shortstop. But, think about it. The way the U.S. is carrying the anti-ISIS war is a total failure because the countries that initially supported, financed, and armed ISIS are within the U.S. coalition. Yeah. ISIS was created out of Al-Qaeda, okay? Al-Qaeda no longer scared you enough. There for the longest time, we were checking under the bed every night, looking for that evil terrorist, Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden's hiding under your bed. He's going to sneak out and kill you at any moment. Oh, you got to be scared of Osama. You got to be scared of Al-Qaeda. Well, after a few years of that, it kind of wears off, we're bored. I'm tired of hearing about Osama bin Laden. I'm tired of hearing about Al-Qaeda, So we need a new boogeyman that's even scarier than Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So let's call him something really scary. Let's call him ISIS. Oh, and this guy who runs ISIS, he's Baghdadi. So now you got to check under your bed every night to make sure Baghdadi's not hiding under there, because he's going to sneak out and he's going to cut your head off. Yeah, you better be really, really scared of Baghdadi, and you better be willing to give us your money and give up your personal liberties, because without it, we can't possibly protect you from that evil terrorist Baghdadi. Yeah, right. 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be absolutely bored to tears with ISIS. We're going to be bored to tears hearing about this guy Baghdadi hiding under our bed, and they're going to have to come up with an even scarier bogeyman to get you back in line, because you are run by fear. When you're no longer afraid, when you got these fear mongers in your government coming at you saying, oh, those evil terrorists, they're going to get you. They're going to get you. You better give us your money and give up your personal liberties. Otherwise, they're going to get you. We can't possibly protect you if you don't give us up your money and give up your freedoms. When you look at them and you laugh at them, what have you been smoking, dude? All of a sudden they've lost control over you. Oh my God. They can no longer get you money. They can no longer get you to willingly throw your children on the bayonets of the enemy. They can no longer get you to give up your personal liberties. Oh my gosh. They then become irrelevant and impotent. But no, as long as they can control you using fear, let's face it, you are their bitch, and you'll do whatever they tell them to do, and thank them for it. Yeah. Last week in the post-show, I do this broadcast on Rents Radio, of course, but I also do a live video presentation from smartscarecrow.com/live. And I record the video session and post them on YouTube for anybody who might be interested under user Smart Scarecrow. But, last week we had a little bit of a after show, where I chatted with the folks in the chat room that gather to watch me make a fool of myself every week, barking at the moon as if anybody was really listening. And we ran a little bit of an experiment. I wanted to illustrate for them how easy it is to manipulate human perception. So we got this evil terrorist outfit out there called Khorasan. Remember them? They were only mentioned for a split second. It looked like maybe they were getting these guys ready just in case ISIS didn't scare you enough. We were going to have Khorasan be the even scarier than ISIS group, Khorasan. At about the same time, there was a report in the news media about Kim Kardashian getting a butt implant or something, and apparently her butt had become even bigger than before. And a lot of people took note and said, wow, she's got one heck of a big booty. So we ran a little experiment. Khorasan, Kardashian, Khorasan, Kardashian. Notice how they kind of sound alike. You got this evil terrorist outfit, Khorasan. And they kind of sound like Kardashian. Khorasan, terrorists. Kardashian, big booty. Khorasan, terrorists. Kardashian, big booty. And the illustration was that it is very easy to associate this evil terrorist outfit, Khorasan, with this luscious Rubenesque booty, Cardassian. So now, for the rest of your life, any time one of these fearmongers looks you in the eye and starts trying to scare you to death about these evil head-cutting-off terrorists, all you're going to be able to think about is Kim Kardashian's Rubenesque booty. Think about it. Could that be the impetus to get you to laugh at them, cause them to become impotent, keep them from using fear as a method of control against you? Hey, if it works, great. You can use such tricks on yourself, you know. You can indeed train yourself to find humor in even the scariest news topics. Well, let's see. Thought I was going to hear the music playing, but I don't hear it, so I guess we'll just keep going on. Now I hear the music. I guess my iPad timekeeper here was running just a little bit slow. But in any case, please do stand by. Studio has to sell some goods to keep the lights burning, and I'll be back to do some more barking at the moon in just a few moments. Alrighty, and we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption to the evening's festivities. You know, and I was just getting to this story about Turkey. Okay, now, Turkey shares a border with Syria. Syria is where the United States and its coalition partners are waging a pitched war against those evil Arab terrorists that make up the Islamic State. Now, Turkey's been kind of playing both sides here. You know, they give lip service to being a NATO nation, and yes, we support the United States, but we're not really sure we want them flying missions out of our turf. And those fellows that are getting medical treatment here in Turkey. Well, maybe they were ISIS. We're not really sure. We just know they need we just kind of closed our eyes when they came across the border. We didn't ask them for a passport or anything. They needed medical care, but Turkey in support of ISIS? No. We're a staunch member of the coalition, but we have decided that we really don't want a pro-Assad military force to be in this town called Kobani. We're not really happy with the idea that ISIS might control it, but we really don't want a pro-Assad. Kobani is within the territorial borders of Syria. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, the public perception. Now, the perception is that Turkey is a NATO nation and is an ally of the United States. But in fact, Turkey has its own agenda. And there was this thing historically, again, some of you may be so young that you didn't get a in-depth historical education, but there was this thing called the Ottoman Empire back before World War I. This goes back a long time ago. And at that time, the Turks were kind of the honcho in that part of the world. They controlled the lion's share of the Middle East. And a lot of Turks remember those days. They remember the days of, the Ottomans and, the fact that, they were competitive. They were competitors on the world stage with the most powerful. European nations. A lot of them long for a return to those days. So, you gotta understand the history to understand where we're going sometimes, because people are very slow to forget. They're very slow to forgive. And there was a time when Syria, Iraq, large portion of Iran, the entire area of Palestine was all under the control of the Ottoman Empire. So Turkey kind of feels like they have a manifest destiny. Where have we heard that before? Turkey considers it their manifest destiny to have influence in that area. Control of Syria by Assad, even though, if you talk to the average person in Syria, Assad might be a butthead, but he's our butthead, and things were pretty good. Assad's not a bad leader. He's kept everybody cooperating. Average person in Syria would probably say, kind of the same thing you'd say about Obama. He may be a butthead, but he's my butthead. I'll fuss and complain about him, and I won't like him. But if anybody from the outside tries to kick his ass, they got to go through me. Okay, and that's the way average folks in Syria think about their government. Yeah, they got their complaints about their government, same as you do. But somebody comes in from the outside and starts telling them how it's going to be. Most people will unite against an outside force, even if the guy in charge is an Obama. Look at your own situation. Okay, you may not like Obama at all. You may think that Congress ain't worth the stick of dynamite to blow them to hell and back. But if the Russians or the Chinese come over here and start pushing your boys around, telling them how it's going to be, how would you react? Yeah, you'd find Grandpappy's old shotgun and some, Well, as we go about the business of nation building around the world, and we just can't figure out why those crazy towel heads in Afghanistan would want to shoot at us when all we're really trying to do is bring them freedom and democracy. Stop and think for just a moment how you would react if that towel head came over here and started telling you how it was going to be. Yeah. He'd be lucky if all he got was a seat full of buckshot. Turkey. Yeah. Truly frightening. Truly frightening. Doctors are being threatened for linking illnesses to Fukushima. Fukushima. The gift that just keeps on giving. Yeah. Arnie Gunderson, nuclear engineer. That's a pretty good summary. Frankly, we continue to get information from people who live there about cancer rates and illnesses in general, not just cancer. We think of radiation as a cancer-causing thing, but it also causes many other ailments, much higher incidences of a whole range of illnesses than they had in 2010, the year before the incident. The statistics are starting to show that people who live in near proximity to Fukushima are becoming ill. Now, nobody can put a finger on it and say, oh, well, this illness was definitely caused by exposure to radiation from Fukushima, but the statistics do not lie, okay? The Japanese, say what you want about the Japanese, but they are very meticulous record keepers. They know exactly how many of this kind of disease and that kind of disease they have in their nation every year. Since the Fukushima disaster, a whole range of illnesses has increased among people who lived in the near vicinity to Fukushima. Now, here in the United States, all we think about is radiation. Well, that's going to cause cancer. That's going to cause you to turn green. Going to cause you to turn into the Hulk or something. We've got some weird perceptions, but in fact, exposure to radiation, one of the very first signs, particularly in older people, is heart failure. Yeah, Oh, well, he was 60 years old. He must have had a bad heart. He just keeled over dead one day. But yeah, coronary diseases is one of the predominant effects of radiation exposure, particularly in older people. Now, in younger people, things like leukemia and cataracts, weird stuff that you normally wouldn't expect kids to get until they were much older age. Bottom line is, exposure to this type of radiation is bioaccumulative. It accumulates in the body, and over time causes disease. I'm hearing the music in the background. I've got to slide out of here for a few moments while the network sells some more goods. Be back in just a moment. All righty, and we're back from the last break of the evening, which means I've got about 12, maybe 13 minutes to try to get through the last few of these articles. Fukushima. We let out with that disaster that just keeps on giving. We sort of should expect the first signs of this radiation exposure to come out of the area closest to the nuclear plant. I mean, let's face it, a lot of those people have ingested or acquired radionucleotides in the air and in the food and from the environment, a little longer and probably at a higher dose than, say, folks here in the United States out on the West Coast. The number of stillbirths in Japan have increased significantly. The number of unexplained childhood leukemias and other weird diseases that, don't usually show up until older age. The effect is accumulative. It's not like you have to be concerned about going out one day and getting zapped and turn into a puddle of radioactive goo. That's not how it works. You accumulate small quantities of these radionucleotides from the air, from the water, from your food, over a long period of time. They build up in the body to a point where eventually the effects can't be repaired by your body's immune system. Normally, look, you get a little bit of some sort of radioactive nucleotide in a little cesium, little radioactive iodine, something of that nature. It does a little bit of damage, but the body's able to repair itself, and eventually the body's able to eliminate this foreign material, unless it happens to mimic calcium, in which case it goes into your bone marrow and continues to do damage. But, in small doses, the body is a marvelous machine, and it is able to overcome small doses of radioactive exposure. But when you're constantly exposed to an ever-increasing amount of these radionucleotides over an extended period of time, life-shortening diseases can be the result. In somebody my age, dementia, some might say I'm already there, or heart failure. are probably the most common things to occur. So, those who say, oh, this Fukushima thing, it's all over with, and we're still alive, we're still here, we didn't turn into green goo, we didn't turn into the Hulk, it's no big deal, nothing happened. These people are very short-sighted, and they don't understand the long-term, ongoing implications of continued exposure. And now, a local council has voted to reopen the Sendai nuclear power plant on the outermost western coast of Japan, despite local opposition and meteorologists' warnings following tremors in a nearby, yeah, you guessed it, volcano. So, it's not bad enough that the Japanese built a nuclear plant damn near at sea level in an area known to periodically get hit by tsunamis. They've also got one sitting right underneath an active volcano, and that one they're now going to turn back on. Isn't that precious? Yeah. And before you point the finger at the Japanese and think this is just a Japanese problem, Diablo Canyon and Hanford are here in the United States. And these are Fukushimas just waiting to happen. Yeah, Hanford's been leaking for years. What's that one up in New York that's, sucker's like a sieve? I mean, we have, at last count, about 23, 25 nuclear reactors right here in the United States that are of the exact same vintage as the ones that went pop at Fukushima. 16 of those sit on known active fault lines. Okay? Sleep well tonight, particularly if you live anywhere near San Andreas or Madras. There's... Now for one of my favorite topics. Yes. Without offering an alternative theory for President Obama's 42% approval rating, which was about the same even before it became obvious his foreign policy had tanked, the mainstream media is insisting that Obamacare isn't driving this election. However, the top 5 issues for the GOP in Senate races for the week of October 13th through 19th were as follows. The number 1 item that Republicans are running their campaigns on is Obamacare, with 12,000 total advertisements just taking the Obama administration to task over Obamacare. The second item was budget government spending, with nearly 9,000 ads run. Energy and environment, with 7,000 ads run. Jobs and unemployment, with about 6,000 ads run. And, of course, everyone's favorite, illegal immigration, with nearly 5,000 ads run. So it seems that in this midterm election cycle, Obamacare is the big item that the Republicans are hoping to get your attention about and get you to vote them into office. Not that they would change a thing other than which gang of thieves gets to feed at the trough of Obamacare. Guarantee you they will still want your money for substandard health care, but at least it'll be Republicans reaping the benefits of your Obamacare dollars. Which gang of thieves would you like to have pick your pocket this time? The Republicrats or the Demopublicans? Take your pick, either shit or manure. Obamacare. Gosh, I just love that Obamacare. Thank you, President Obama, for giving me that free health care. Are you still worried about Ebola? Frankly, you should be, okay? I mean, it's not so much Ebola as the incompetence of government agencies in handling what could turn out to be a really, really serious problem. Okay, I mean, it's kind of like Katrina in slow motion. Remember Katrina? Remember how the government just absolutely fell on its face? Do you really think this government is capable of managing an epidemic of Ebola? Now, so far, we've been lucky. Okay, I think at last count there was like 4 confirmed infections, maybe a couple of hundred suspected. You know, there's people being watched right now who've recently come back from that part of the area or had exposure to somebody who's been known to be infected. There's a couple hundred that might be in some form of quarantine right now, or they're keeping an eye on them because you just don't know. But right now, I think in the United States we have all of 4 confirmed Ebola infections. So far, we have been lucky. We have so far dodged the bullet. Now, here recently, it's come out that the Ebola virus is capable of surviving for perhaps as many as a couple of months on flat surfaces at reduced temperatures. Okay, what does that mean? That means that particularly during cold weather in areas without direct exposure to sunlight, because sunlight kills this virus, okay? It's the UVC light. The UVC light in sunlight just absolutely destroys the virus. So if you go to the shopping center and you want to grab a shopping cart, don't grab one of the ones that are undercover. Grab one of the ones that are out in the parking lot that have been exposed to the sun. That's the safest one, because on the smooth surface of the handle of that shopping cart, the Ebola virus might survive for as much as 2 months. As much as 2 months, particularly in cool weather. Something to think about. There's also reports out there that for some reason, the United States might actually invite in foreigners who have been infected with Ebola, because we're just so capable of handling that here in the United States. Oh my goodness, I'm down to about a minute and a half. Which of these last few articles is probably the most heinous? Yes. Got to go after this one here. The Internal Revenue Service has been seizing bank accounts belonging to small businesses and individuals who regularly made deposits of less than $10,000 but broke no laws. Say you run a roach coach, okay? You got your little truck and you serve sandwiches. You work hard. You spend the whole morning making these sandwiches, then you drive them around to all the businesses and you sell them. And most of your business is cash. You know that there's all kinds of reporting requirements. If you go to the bank and try to deposit $10,000 in your account at the bank, you know there's all kinds of reporting requirements. So I don't want to screw with that. So you deposit $9,000 one day, and the next day you deposit another $9,000. And from that money, that's what you buy your supplies, your gasoline, everything you need to run your little roach coach business. But, because you purposely try to keep the money under the reporting requirement that the IRS has, you look suspicious to them. So they freeze your accounts. Yeah, they've been doing that to people. And that was my last article for the evening. I'm hearing the music in the background. They're grabbing me off the stage with the hook. I've done enough barking at the moon for this week. You betcha I'll be back next Tuesday and we'll do it again. Good night, all. Alrighty, I think yep, I've broken the connection with the Rents studio. This article about the IRS, the IRS, I think somebody with an open mind could probably find a RICO, claim against the IRS. I mean, yeah, oh boy. No, the IRS is never used as a weapon against political opponents. Well, so how did I do, guys? Did I cover all the really, really, really important items in the news this week? I can think of at least a few here. Did you know they're going back after Bundy again? Well, we all knew they would. I mean, there was no way that the Bureau of Land Management and the federal government was going to tolerate, this whacked out Mormon cattle rancher standing up to him and thumbing his nose at him, saying, "Hell no, I won't go now." They're coming after him. They have basically decided to declare that entire chunk of of territory to be some sort of protected sanctuary, and human activities are going to be strictly prohibited. You're not even going to be allowed to hike through there and camp. Okay, so the idea of Bundy running his cattle there, yeah, I guess we're just supposed to get all our beef from the Argentines, right? We're just supposed to buy all our beef from Argentina. Frankly, in some ways, it'd probably be healthier, but we've got the ability to raise excellent quality cattle here. And why the federal government would want to discourage cattle ranching? I mean, these guys work hard, okay? This is not an easy job. People who, take that life to heart and live that life, you got to admire them to a certain degree. I mean, we're not talking a 9-to-5 job here where, at 5:01, you lock up the office and you go home and you forget about it. No, these guys work 7 days a week. They're on call 24 hours a day. They get no holidays. They get no vacation. They bust their butts to make sure that your burger is juicy and tasty and of good quality. Why the federal government would want to put people like that out of business, I don't know. But yeah, they're going back after Bundy and anybody else who might dare to try to raise high quality beef or chicken, or if it's not owned by Monsanto or PepsiCo or whatever. You don't need it anyway. If it doesn't come out of a can or a box, you shouldn't be eating it because it's probably not safe. U.S. college students faced high debt, shattered dreams. This is an interesting article. This came, believe it or not, out of Al Jazeera. On October 1st of this year, Germany's Lower Saxony became the last German state to make college free for all, including international students. Briefly breaking from a national tradition of free universities, Germany began charging a small amount of tuition in 2006, but that experiment failed. German leaders now say that tuition-based education is unjust and unfairly privileges students from affluent backgrounds. Duh! Now, I'm sure they still have their Yale and their Harvard and their Cornell, where only the uppers, or somebody who's, had alumni attending, can afford to go. But, the idea of a high-quality college education in Germany for a fee is now history. By contrast, tuition in the United States at public and private colleges has risen steeply over the past 10 years. Even worse, private for-profit colleges have proliferated around the country, with enrollment growing by 225%. See, this is another one of these subprime bubbles. Okay? What you got is you got a young punk kid with mush for brains that's just come out of high school. And the school counselor says, oh, well, you got to go to college. And the kid says, well, you know, my dad's a plumber. My dad's an electrician. And, you know, I may go to trade school. I may learn plumbing, or I may learn electrical work, or I may learn heating and air conditioning, or whatever. And, you know, we just don't have the money for me to get a college education. I need to learn a trade so I can have some useful work. Oh, no. You got to go to college. You're a bright kid, and don't worry about paying for it. We got this thing here called a student loan, okay? And these loans are issued to these kids with no collateral, no proof that they'll ever be in a position to repay those loans. It's kind of like the subprime mortgage on a home that the bank knew these people couldn't possibly afford to pay. But, you know, they lent the money anyway because there was an immediate maker's fee involved with generating the paper. They got a little piece of the action right up front on a mortgage that extends for 30 years. And it's the same with these student loans. If you write the student loan, you get a little commission right up front. I'll have to excuse, that's the somebody on my cell phone of all things. But what you have to understand is that these student loans cannot even be discharged in bankruptcy. So even if the kid, you know, has no prospects, no ability to pay whatsoever, it's like debtor's prison. They cannot discharge that loan under any circumstances. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, George Bush. You know, that's what your Republicans did for you. Yeah, and these student loans are indeed being bundled and sold as, you know, these investment securities to your retirement funds and everything. You know, it's another major financial bubble just waiting to burst. That's it for my prepared articles for the evening. Well, guys, what interesting items in the news did I miss this week? And how many of you were thinking booty the whole time I was talking about them evil terrorists? Do I think the Canadian terrorist will get his 72 virgins since he didn't offer the chance to convert to the soldiers he snug up and shot in the back of the head? You know, I don't know enough about Muslim theology. I'm of the impression that, you know, according to their theology, if you're on vendetta, or in their case, I think they call it jihad. See, the Italians got the same thing. The Italians got this thing, vendetta. You know, if you are killed in the course of vendetta, you're taking family retribution for a slight against your family. You know, I mean, that's you know, the Pope sanctifies it, you know, so you just immediately go to heaven, you know, because, you know, you were on a righteous quest for revenge. So, you know, we can talk about, you know, how the Muslims are crazy for their 72 virgins and this, that, and the other thing. But, you know, believe me, there is enough craziness in Christianity that we can find a tit-for-tat comparison with that, you know, we really shouldn't be striking too hard at Muslims for their theology, because as crazy as Islam is, Christianity is coming right in there. Good competitor. Do I think he'll get his 72 virgins? No, I think he's going to be very disappointed to find that he was lied to. How about the spying flashlight app on my smartphone? I don't have a spying flashlight app on my phone, but yeah, I heard about that one. I also heard about the FBI apparently impersonating a big newspaper in order to install spyware on people's computers. Yeah, it's craziness. Yeah. Oh, excuse me just a moment here. What? Oh, okay. Guys, I may have to cut it short here. Apparently, I'm expecting an important phone call coming through just shortly. So I'll throw it to the audience. Is there any last-minute issues that we need to cover before I beg out of here? Did I mention banker suicides? You know, there was an article about banker suicides this week, but, you know, it was not in my mix for this week. We might talk about banker suicides next week. Anything? Yeah, there's been more voter fraud found. Apparently some of the machines in Maryland were found doing the same thing that the machines in Chicagoland were doing, where you push the button 15 times trying to get it to register a vote for one guy, but instead it registers it for the other. So, hey, watch your voting machines. Oh, for the days of the hanging Chad. It was so much simpler back when all we had to worry about was if our Chad was hanging. Oh, those evil terrorists or those big booties? Which one? Yeah, poor Maury's complaining now that it's worked in reverse for Maury. I've made him, absolutely terrorized of big booties. It didn't work for Maury. Oh, well. All right, guys, I'm going to have to bag it. Y'all have a good evening. I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. And, we'll talk to you again next week. Good night, all.
Calling out to you, won't you turn, won't you turn around?